Welcome back to Steffi Fan's channel. Today we will learn about the devastating confrontation that shattered the Forrester family bonds and left Eric Forrester fighting for his life in one of the most shocking episodes yet to unfold in the glamorous yet treacherous world of high fashion. The storm breaks. The morning started like any other at Forrester Creations, with the usual buzz of designers, models, and executives moving through the sleek hallways of the iconic building. But beneath the surface of normalcy, a storm was brewing that would tear through every foundation of the Forrester empire. Rich Forrester had spent the previous night unable to sleep, his mind racing with suspicions that something wasn't quite right with their latest competitive intelligence reports. The Logan brand had been making unusually bold moves in recent weeks, unveiling designs that seemed to anticipate Forrester's next collection with uncanny precision. When Rich finally pieced together the puzzle, the revelation hit him like a freight train. Anonymous tips from concerned employees, suspicious timing of Logan's product launches, and finally, the damning evidence he discovered while reviewing some misplaced documents all pointed to an unthinkable betrayal from within his own family. His hands trembled as he held the design sketches, each one bearing the unmistakable signature of Eric Forrester, the patriarch of the family and founder of Forrester Creations. The signature that had built an empire was now scrawled across designs intended for their greatest rival. Rich's face turned crimson with rage as the implications became crystal clear. His father, the man who had preached family loyalty above all else for decades, had been secretly collaborating with the enemy. The betrayal felt personal, professional, and utterly devastating. Without thinking twice, Rich grabbed the incriminating sketches and stormed out of his office, his footsteps echoing through the corridor like thunder as employees scattered out of his path. The usually composed executive was a man obsessed, driven by a toxic cocktail of anger, disappointment, and shattered trust. Confrontation in Katie's office. Rich burst through the door of Katie Logan's office with such force that the handle crushed against the wall, leaving a visible dent in the pristine white surface. The sudden intrusion startled both Katie and Eric, who had been engaged in what appeared to be a casual discussion about upcoming projects. Katie's eyes widened in alarm as she took in Rich's furious expression and aggressive stance. Eric, who had been sitting comfortably in one of Katie's elegant chairs, immediately straightened up, his face draining of color as he recognized the papers clutched in his son's white-knuckled grip. The office, usually a sanctuary of calm professionalism with its tasteful decor and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles, suddenly felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Rich slammed the design sketches onto Katie's mahogany desk with such violence that her coffee cup rattled dangerously in its saucer. His voice, when it came, was a roar that could probably be heard 3 floors down. He demanded to know how his father could commit such an egregious act of treachery, working behind the family's back for the very people they had competed against for years. The accusations poured out of Ridge in a torrential flood. He called Eric a traitor, a sellout, and a disgrace to the Forrester name. He questioned whether anything his father had ever taught him about family values and business ethics had been genuine or just empty. Words. Katie attempted to intervene, raising her hands in a placating gesture and trying to explain that there might be a reasonable explanation. But Rich's rage was too consuming to allow for any interruption. He whirled on Katie, his eyes blazing, and told her to stay out of family business before immediately returning his fury to his father. Eric's desperate explanation. Eric rose slowly from his chair, his movements deliberate and dignified despite the assault on his character. The elderly designer, who had weathered countless storms in his long career, tried to maintain his composure even as his son's words cut deeper than any blade. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady but tinged with sadness and frustration. He attempted to explain the circumstances that had led him to this point, but every word seemed to fall on deaf ears. Eric revealed that he had felt increasingly marginalized at Forrester Creations in recent months. Ridge's takeover of creative control had left the company founder feeling like a relic of the past, his ideas dismissed as outdated, and his artistic vision overruled at every turn. The man who had built the fashion house from nothing now found himself sidelined in his own company, reduced to making token appearances at board meetings while his son dictated the direction of the brand. The humiliation and sense of irrelevance had been eating away at him for far too long. Working with the Logan brand, Eric explained with mounting emotion. It wasn't about betraying his family, it was about reclaiming his identity as an artist. Katie had approached him with an opportunity to create freely again, to design without the constant shadow of Ridge's disapproval hanging over every sketch and fabric choice. For the first time in years, Eric had felt valued for his talent rather than tolerated out of respect for his past achievements. The collaboration had reignited a creative spark that Ridge's heavy-handed leadership style had systematically extinguished. Eric's voice cracked slightly as he spoke about the countless times Ridge had dismissed his ideas in front of the design team. The way his son had rolled his eyes during presentations of his work, and the subtle but unmistakable message that Eric Forrester's time had passed. The elder designer had poured his heart and soul into Forrester Creations for decades, only to be treated like an inconvenient reminder of a bygone era. The Logan project had represented more than just design work, it had been a lifeline to his artistic soul. The point of no return. But Ridge was beyond reasoning. The betrayal felt too raw, too personal, and too calculated to be explained away by wounded pride or creative frustration. In Ridge's mind, his father had actively chosen to undermine everything the Forrester family had built together. He had taken their secrets, their techniques, and their legacy, and handed them over to people who would use that knowledge to destroy them in the marketplace. No amount of talk about artistic inspiration could justify such a fundamental breach of loyalty. Ridge's final words were delivered with cold, devastating precision. He declared that as far as he was concerned, Eric Forrester was no longer his father. The man standing before him was a stranger who had sold out his own blood for a chance to feel relevant again. Ridge announced that Eric would have no further involvement in Forrester Creations, no access to company resources, and no claim to the family legacy he had so carelessly discarded. The disownment was complete and absolute, delivered with a viciousness that shocked even Katie into stunned silence. The office seemed to freeze in that terrible moment. Eric's face, already pale, went completely white as the full weight of his son's words crashed over him. His eyes, which had sparkled with creative passion just moments before while discussing his work, now reflected only devastation and disbelief. Ridge's rejection cut through every defense Eric had built up, striking at the very core of his identity as both a father and a designer. The collapse. The emotional trauma proved too much for Eric's aging heart. He suddenly clutched at his chest with both hands, his fingers digging into the fabric of his expensive suit jacket as pain radiated through his body. His breathing became shallow and labored, each gasp seeming to require tremendous effort. The proud patriarch, who had stood tall through decades of business battles and personal challenges, now staggered backward, his legs unable to support his weight. Katie screamed as she watched Eric's knees buckle. She lunged forward trying to reach him, but she was too far away. Eric crumpled to the floor in what seemed like slow motion, his body hitting the plush carpet with a sickening thud. His face contorted in agony, and his usually vibrant eyes glazed over as consciousness began to slip away. The design sketches that had caused such fury scattered around him like fallen leaves, a tragic reminder of the passion project that had led to this catastrophic moment. Ridge stood frozen, his anger evaporating instantly and being replaced by sheer terror. The rage that had consumed him just seconds ago now seemed utterly insignificant compared to the sight of his father lying motionless on the floor. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly as his brain struggled to process the sudden shift from confrontation to medical emergency. The powerful executive who had just delivered such brutal condemnation now looked like a lost child, paralyzed by the horrifying consequences of his actions. Katie's scream for help pierced through Ridge's shock stupor. She dropped to her knees beside Eric, her hands shaking as she checked for a pulse and tried to keep him conscious. Her voice, usually so controlled and professional, came out in panicked shrieks as she yelled for someone to call 911 immediately. She grabbed her phone from the desk with trembling fingers, nearly dropping it twice before managing to dial emergency services. Her words tumbled out in a frantic rush as she gave the address and described Eric's condition to the dispatcher, all while keeping her free hand pressed against Eric's chest